In 2014, I played a game called Legendary Encounters Aliens, and I really enjoyed that game. It was based on the original Legendary game, the one with superheroes, which I enjoyed but did not blow me away. But Legendary Encounters Aliens, I really enjoyed immensely because it managed to do something that is rarely done in games that rely on a deck building engine like that one does, which is to have a strong narrative. That is a game that managed to marry story with deck building mechanics, which is really tough because there's so much variability and so much randomness in deck building games, and yet in Legendary Encounters Alien, you did have a strong story. You did have stories that were inspired by the 4 original movies in the Aliens franchise, and so you were facing similar challenges to the ones that the protagonists had to face. The characters of the movies were there. The objectives that you had to complete were based on the plots of the movies, and overall there was this strange, incredible sense, in fact, of narrative progression, that you're buying new cards and using them to meet certain challenges actually did have to do with the plot and did allow you to experience the stories in a quite surprising, vivid way. So I was very excited when I saw that there was another game that was based on the same philosophy, and that game is Legendary Encounters, a Predator deck building game. I picked up this game at Gen Con 2015, and I was super excited about it. I don't know how, for some reason, then I forgot about it. Well, just there's so many games out there, so many other things also to do every darn day. And I kind of forgot about it, but recently I saw it on a shelf and I was like, whoa, 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 wait a second, I need to play. And played, I did. So this game is based on the same core ideas of Legendary Encounters Aliens. So if you play that game, you know most of what happens here. The biggest innovation, though, is that, well, here you still have 4 scenarios, like in the original game. These scenarios are paired in two pairs, or divided in 2 pairs that are very different from one another, because you have 2 scenarios in which you play as the humans cooperatively against the monsters, precisely as it happens in the original game. But you also have 2 scenarios in which actually you play as the predators, and this is not in that case that is not a competitive game. You're fighting against one another, hunting down humans in the jungle or in an urban landscape. Again, both scenarios are based on the 2 original movies of the Predator franchise. You're hunting down humans and trying to kill as many of them as possible to gain honor. It's basically a test, it's a competition, sort of like it's a reality show for predators, pretty much, in which you're trying to score points and to show that you are the coolest predator, and then at the end it will look like a Survivor episode. Anyways, competitive game based on hunting rather than cooperative game based on defending. Let me show you how the game and the scenarios and basically the 2 variants of the game work. I should almost say actually there are 2 games in this box, so let's talk about these 2 games. Like other games in the Legendary series, this game here comes with a very nice play mat that you can roll and store in the box, and this is very useful to organize the cards as you're playing and also to avoid having cards sliding around on the table. Like in other mats in the series also, this one is pretty busy and sometimes it's hard, or it's not all that intuitive and immediate to see the cards and to see them stand out from the background, but that is a very minor complaint that I have. I even know that it's a complaint, it's mainly an annotation, a footnote. Now, as for gameplay, each player controls a character that is represented by an avatar card. And here you have an indication of a card you need to place in your starting deck. What really matters here is your starting health, that for this guy here would be 9. There's also another value printed here, which is the defense, but in most cases you will not use it, so we don't need to concern ourselves with that right now. Health is what's really important. During the game you may lose health points, and if your health goes down to 0, then your character is out of the game. Each character includes a matching card that is placed in the initial deck, and then the starting deck is made of cards representing brute strength and experience, so which are the basic cards providing you with 2 resources in the game. One is hit points or attack points, and one is experience points, or whatever you want to call them. The important thing is this is the currency that you use to purchase stuff in the game. As for the anatomy of the cards, yes, here in the bottom left corner, a card with an icon will tell you if the card generates hit points or experience points or both. The number that you see here is the cost that one needs to pay in experience points to acquire the card. These are starting cards, so the value is 0. In the game, then you will acquire cards that have a numerical value there. For example, this one would require 3 experience points that they generate from my hand, and then I buy that card using my 3 experience points, and I can put it in my discard pile later when I pick up my discard pile and shuffle it to refresh my pile. The card will go in my pile and finally in my hand. Typical deck building ideas here. Now, that's for the cards. Actually, for the cards, something important also, there may be effects here. Sometimes the effects are automatic, sometimes they have an icon of this kind. Cards have also icons of this type here. To activate an effect that has an icon of this kind, you need to have played a card with that icon before you played this one. So if I'm playing this card here, it gives me this benefit, but it doesn't give me this advantage here because the card cannot use its own icon. But suppose that earlier in the turn I had played this card here that does have that icon, then I play this card here, and now I can activate this effect here. There's also a couple of other interesting effects. For example, Coordinate allows you to play a card out of turn to benefit another player, so that the effect of the card can be used by another player. The player basically is playing a virtual copy of your card. Brother in Arms, the advantage that the card gives you is increased if you have multiple characters with different names that are in your hand, and then you have played this turn. So a couple of other effects. Another one is called Call for backup. It gives you benefits if you have received help from a Coordinate card. A lot of interesting things there. But alas, this is a game with a lot of enemies, a lot of bad guys. And the bad guys will come out from this deck here. And this deck, the enemy deck, is actually made of 3 mini decks. As you can see, they're numbered 3, 2, and 1. Basically, you take each mini deck, and there are several ones, you can mix and match them. These are the 3 mini decks to represent the story from the first Predator movie, but you can mix and match from different movies. You take 3 mini decks with 3 different numbers, 1, 2, and 3. You shuffle the mini decks individually, and you put them in order 3, 2, and 1, with 1 on top, and you place them there on your playmat. Also, in your enemy deck, you will shuffle in some special cards called Youngblood. This is pretty important because those cards, you will not use the same ones every time, and shuffling in those cards that are not in the standard deck and you don't know which ones they are, will keep things fresh and unpredictable, because you may play with exactly the same deck again later, and you will have a slightly different experience because different special cards have been added in the next game. Same deck again, different special cards. These special extra cards are called the Youngblood for the human game and the Mercenary for the Predator game. Now, when you start your turn in the game, first thing, you take a card from the enemy deck and you place it on this track here, face down. It's very similar to the other Legendary games. Then next player, next turn, will also, at the beginning of their turn, take a card, will push down this one and put it there. And you continue like this. Each turn a new card is added, and if the card needs to push other cards down, then it does so. It's also possible the cards are removed, eliminated, and in that case you don't need to push the entire line, but only until you fill all the gaps. Cards in the human game are placed face down on that track, and if it gets to the point that the entire track is filled and another card needs to be added, then the cards push each other until the last one that was here gets in the combat zone, and it is revealed if it still was face down. Let's say is this one.
And when things are in the combat zone, things are bad for you, because then later in the turn, all cards that are in the combat zone, all enemy cards that are in combat zone, will strike you, will attack your character. So you're trying to eliminate as many of these cards as possible before they get here, because when they're here, there may be text effects that affect you, but usually they're less dangerous than when they are here. So, but the beginning of your turn, that's pretty much what you do. You simply add a card and you resolve the movement of the cards. Now we go back to your hand of cards, and it is your turn. You will have a hand of 6 cards in your hand, and you can play them from your hand in any order and combination that you want, and you simply spend the values that they generate. So I can spend cards from my hand to acquire cards from this area here. This area here always have 5 available cards, so as soon as one is purchased, another one is added, which is interesting because if I do have more experience points and I want to use them, I can buy something, I can buy a new card immediately. There's also another deck of cards called the Commander. They can be purchased at all times, so they are not in this area here, they are always there, they have their own area. If you decide to acquire one, it costs 3. You simply flip it face up. You're buying it blind. The effects are all the same, but the icons change, and then you simply add the new card to your hand. Nope, not to your hand, to your discard pile. So anything that you acquire goes to your discard pile. Something else that you can do, again, you can activate effects by simply following the text on the cards. And very important, you will want to use your strike points to attack the enemies. To defeat an enemy, you need to produce enough attack points, hit points from your present hand to match or exceed the number that you see here at the bottom right corner of the enemy that you're attacking. There are also effects, for example, the death effect takes place when the enemy is defeated, and a lot of other possible things. Here, this is all in the game. So we have, for example, another enemy who also produces another ongoing effect. So while this guy is around, you have to take this effect into account. And you need 5 attack points to defeat that guy. As you can see though, if you attack people in the combat zone, well, they're face up, so you see them. If you want to gain knowledge about the cards that are in this area here, you need to scan the corresponding area, because remember, these cards enter the game face down. So you need to spend attack points first to reveal a card, and then if you do have enough attack points, you can still attack it if it is an enemy. It's also possible, however, that you have triggered an event, and in that case you simply check the card that correspond to the present mini deck. These are general cards that give instructions about the objectives that you're trying to achieve. As you can see, they match the mini decks of the enemy deck. So while we're in this phase of the game, this card is on top of the objectives deck, then this is what the event corresponds to. This is what the event means. If you flip up, if you reveal an event card, there's also hazard cards. So let's see if I can find one. If I can't, I'll simply, there you go. Then each game also has a location that indicates where the confrontation is taking place, and also indicates what the hazard card means, what it corresponds to. When you reveal it, you simply read the instructions here, and you follow the instructions. For example, here you put the hazard card beneath your avatar as a mark. Being marked by a predator should be self-explanatory, is bad stuff, because all of the negative game effects that apply to marked characters. The predator is paying particular attention to you. You should have kept a lower profile. So you spend your cards, your points to purchase new cards that go in your deck, to attack, to reveal cards, to attack people, and by doing so, first you survive, and then you will also complete the objectives, because you will acquire cards that come out here that you need to complete your objectives, or you will remove cards that are needed to complete your objectives. The objectives may change, but it is by purchasing cards and destroying cards that you complete those objectives. However, once you're done with your turn, if there still are enemies here in the combat zone, then they strike you. Each enemy that is there strike you once, and for each strike that you receive, you draw a card from this deck and you add it to your play area. What I do usually is I put them under my character like this, so that I know what's happening. that the character is dying, basically. And the basic value here is the number in the bottom right corner that indicates simply the number of health points that my character has lost by acquiring that wound, that strike card. There are also strikes that have other effects, and you simply implement the text that is in the cards. You may have noticed the art is pretty cartoonish in most cards, but it gets pretty serious in some of these cards here. There's just a different flavor. There's more violence and gore in the strike cards, which I guess makes sense with the theme. It's just strange. There's a slight change in tone in the art from these cards to almost every other card in the game, such as this one. You win the game if you survive long enough to meet one of the two victory conditions, which are either to defeat the Predator that is in this deck and will come out towards the end, or to meet a victory condition described on one of the objective cards. So each game played as the human will have two victory conditions: a major one to defeat the big bad guy, and a minor one to complete the objective. Now, this game, however, can also be played as the Predators, which is in essence similar. It's a similar idea. You do have, for example, cards that you need to purchase that go down here. It's just that instead of being people that help you, or upgrades, technologies, tactics that you can acquire, instead of having an avatar representing a human soldier, you have an avatar representing a bad guy. But again, the idea is that you have both the avatar and the special card that goes in your initial deck. The initial deck is the same. It has the same art. That doesn't change. The enemy deck represents bad humans that you're trying to take down, but otherwise it has the same idea, that it is divided in three mini decks placed in order, one on top of the other. Actually, two different things that go in the Predator, also in the human deck, because the human deck is what you're facing when you're fighting against the humans as the Predator. One is this card here. It simply goes on the track as usual when it comes out of the enemy deck. But then when you should go to the combat zone, it forces you to, unless it has been defeated by paying this price here, then it forces you to take a card, a trap card from a specific deck, and to suffer the negative consequences. There are also gear cards, so when this card is revealed, then you take a card from another deck, which is the deck. This indicates that a human enemy has geared up. Then you take a card from another deck that tells you what the upgrade was, and you add that card with that upgrade to a human enemy that is still out there and that you need to fight. Also, again, the enemies, you fight them as usual. But you see there is this other number here. This is the number of honor points that you gain by defeating an enemy. Differently from the human game, here you're simply trying to prove your valor, as on you're going out to slaughter and kill people to acquire honor points that you will use at the end of the game to prove that you're the best Predator out there. Another important difference is that when the cards come out of the enemy deck, they come out face up instead of face down, because the Predators clearly have a much better tactical awareness, situational awareness of what's going on, much better positional techniques than the humans have. And then also you have a specific type of strike cards that you receive when there are human enemies in the combat zone and they strike you. There are game effects that force you to take a strike card, and the strike cards work just like the ones for the humans. They reduce your life points, but there's also another type of damage that you receive. There is a dishonor, so simply a penalty that doesn't kill you but reduces the number of honor points that you receive at the end of the game, unless you use game effects to restore those, which is entirely possible. Now, the big difference also is that in the Predator game, players are not cooperating, they're competing. It feels much more like Thunderstone in a sense. The players are getting a good decks of cards to attack enemies and to put them in their trophy pile and to score points at the end of the game. So it's competitive, but it is also it's competitive and mainly geared towards a fight between each predator and human prey, but it is also entirely possible to attack another predator. There are cards or game effects that will allow you to inflict pain and suffering on your technically on your mates, but in any case on your competitors, on the other predators in the fight. The Predator game may end in one of three ways. It may end when any one of the Predators dies, or when the deck of enemy cards runs out, or there is a special prey, an ultimate prey in the enemy deck. When the Predators kill the ultimate prey, then also the game is over. At that point, you count the number of honor points that you have in your trophy pile, and the Predator with the highest amount is the winner of the game.
Now, I like both games. They're pretty different from one another. They really play differently. What is good, though, is that once you learn one, the other one comes very naturally. You do not have to relearn the second game from scratch. And it's even easier if you already played the original game. Then here, the cooperative human game will be covered pretty much by the same rules, with some adjustments, but it will be very easy to pick up the game from there, and then you move on to the Predator game. As for gameplay, I think I still prefer the cooperative game, like in the original Alien game, and here I like the two scenarios that are cooperative. I like this idea of the sense of dread of being hunted by monsters, or having to defend against these crazy attacks. It's more of a sense of urgency, of mounting dread and despair. I like really that fact of seeing your group that is getting weakened, and the monsters become tougher and tougher, and you're trying to rush to the deck to try to reach the end and meet the end conclusion. I like that the different sense. I find it more exciting, more thrilling. The Predator game, when you're trying to hunt down humans, is perfectly fine and good. It's actually enjoyable. It reminds me of one of my favorite games, which is Thunderstone. But maybe precisely because of that, I already played Thunderstone so many times that I do not know that I needed a Thunderstone experience here. It plays differently because of a slightly different engine that you have here. It's more streamlined than Thunderstone. There are fewer things that you have to keep in mind when you're playing the Predator game that you have in Thunderstone. One of the problems with the original Thunderstone was that early on you will spend a lot of time building your deck without doing anything with it, and then finally your deck is strong enough that you can kill almost every enemy. Here you start fighting from the beginning, and the enemies become increasingly tougher as they come out from the deck, which is divided in different sections, precisely so that there is a progression in the strength and the capabilities of the enemies that you face. But ultimately it is put together a strong attack, go and collect points from your enemies. I like the other things that they have added, probably to add more flavor and more challenges. Actually, they added a couple of extra things to the Predator game. For example, I didn't mention this in my main segment. There are tests. There are some cards that will present specific challenges, and if you meet the condition on that test card that comes out of a deck randomly, then you score some extra points. So you cannot plan too much ahead, because all of a sudden the opportunity for a certain test emerges, and then you may try to achieve the temporary objective to have to grab those points quickly. Also, there is another deck of similar cards. These are called challenges. They are given to players at the beginning of the game, and these affect long-term planning. For example, these challenges that are different from each player will give you extra points if at the end of the game you're the player with the biggest deck, or the player that has with the most health, or has killed more humans numerically, this kind of thing. So you have a lot of variety there, which is added, and which makes things interesting when otherwise the game may be a little too linear otherwise. It's two fine games. I still prefer the original Aliens game because I like the cooperative engine better, and I have 4 scenarios for that in that game here. Here, the part that I like, I only have 2. But again, the other part I like too, actually. I just like it a little less. Ideally, I would have liked another big box with 4 Predator scenarios where you have the humans defending against the Predators. They could have taken inspiration from other movies related to the franchise, from the comics. There are other sources, of course. They could have just made up another story. Who cares? I liked original Alien set, because the version of the game that I like the most I can play in 4 variants, in 4 scenarios. Here the version I play the most only has 2 of them. The other one is perfectly good and fine, just not as exciting to me. But in any case, don't get the sense that I'm giving those 2 other scenarios or half of the game a negative review. Is it just that I'm comparing this set to one of my favorite sets for deck building games in the last couple of years? So it's just that the standard that was set by that other game is very high. But otherwise, other than that, per se, Legendary Encounters is a really good game. It's really fun, it's really exciting. The action is there, the progression is there, the narrative again is there. You have this strange, incredible ability that this engine has managed to develop to tell a story, to create an exciting string of challenges and character interaction through what is a very classic traditional buy a card, put in your discard pile, shuffle, see what happens next. The mechanics of deck building are some of the most abstract and themeless that have ever been devised, and yet at the same time here they are matched with a strong theme, and they do result in a strong plot, or as you say, in several plots depending on the scenario that you're playing and what happens in the scenario. So I like the narrative aspect very much, and the theme definitely is fun. Legendary Encounters, a Predator deck building game. Maybe less interesting to me than the original set, but absolutely a great set and much more interesting than most other deck building games out there.